We've all heard of the Canada Pension Plan, of course, guarantees retired Canadians a monthly amount. We're likely to hear a lot more in the years ahead about the APP, the possibility of a separate Alberta pension plan if, and it is a big if, Alberta chooses to leave the Canada Plan set up its own. Would be years and years away, would have to involve a referendum, but Alberta's government promoting the idea is smart strategy. The Trudeau government worried about what it would mean. The finance minister holding an emergency meeting today with her provincial counterparts, including Nate Horner there. You just heard from him, Alberta's finance minister. Let's bring in the front bench. Sabrina Grover is a federal Liberal candidate. She ran for them back in 2021. Nowadays, though, principal at Shakti Strategy. She's in Calgary. Melanie Paradis, the communications director for former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, now the president at Texture Communications. Former Ontario NDP MPP Guradan Singh. He's now vice president at Crestview Strategies. Also the brother of federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and our senior digital parliamentary reporter here at CTV News, Rachel Aiello. There we go, the front bench. Let me start with you, Sabrina. You're in Calgary. You ran for the Liberals in Calgary Centre. Is this political theatre by Alberta, or is this a real threat to set up an APP?
I would describe it as an extra credit project that nobody asked for, and the extra credit is that you get to lose your pension if you're a senior here in Alberta. I saw Nate Horner a couple of times this week appear on a couple of different shows, and what he keeps saying is that Alberta, or that the feds need to show the math, even though for some reason this project has just come up, in the last couple of months, and the Alberta government only released their own math on this file just recently. And I think what the Danielle Smith and the province needs to show their math on is who asked for this, who wants this. It's polling incredibly poorly. And let's not forget that 3 years ago, AIMCO, which is the Alberta Investment Management Corporation, posted a $2.1 billion loss on the pension that it was managing. And so there's not really a lot of bench strength in the Alberta economy to show that they have the ability to manage this. No one's asking for it, and it hasn't been shown to be a popular proposal. So I think at best it's political theater. And if it was really important to the Premier, why wasn't it in the throne speech on Monday?
There's a whole website, albertapensionplan.ca. People can check out touting the benefits. To you, Melanie, your take and the options here for the Trudeau government.
Well, I think it's important to note where this all came from originally. I mean, we've seen for years now Western alienation becoming stronger and stronger, and the federal government not taking it seriously enough. I think that Albertans are right to be upset that they have been contributing enormously to the CVP and contributing enormously to the Canadian economy, to our social services across the country through their tax base for decades, and they're not getting the appreciation that they deserve, frankly. And so I think that the first step that the federal government needs to take is to start showing Alberta a bit more love and appreciation for the incredible contributions that they make to the quality of life that all Canadians enjoy. And that means showing more appreciation for their economy and for oil and gas in particular, and to stop demonizing it.
A couple of things here, Guradan. I mean, Quebec has its own plan, so some might say, why not Alberta? Just building on what Mel was saying, Danielle Smith before her, Jason Kenney, the Alberta government has taken on the role of standing up to the federal government for Western Canada, for Alberta. This is part of a suite of different policies they're trying to bring in to that effect. Your thoughts on it?
Well, you stand up for something when you actually can deliver a benefit to people. What Danielle Smith is recommending right now is going to devastate workers across this country. We're talking about seniors who work so hard to build this nation will now have their pension at risk. We're talking about the next generation who are going to be relying on the support system. They're going to have their pension at risk. This is something that's going to hurt not just people across Canada, but also Albertans. It's irresponsible, it's problematic, and frankly, I'm incredibly concerned that the federal counterpart, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, isn't saying and doing more to dissuade such terrible public policy. So I think this is a bad idea, and across the board, it needs to be something that is immediately this conversation needs to end. And instead, the Alberta government should be focusing on issues that are before them, like housing, like healthcare, all the public infrastructure that's crumbling underneath them right now. They should be focusing on them instead of doing something that's putting our entire nation, could potentially put the entire nation into turmoil.
Rachel, the numbers are going to be thrown a lot here. It's going to likely turn into a mess of arguments, counter arguments, billions here, billions there, alarm bells ringing. What's your prediction?
Look,
I think we can all acknowledge, Todd, this was probably not the best week for the federal government to be trying to make, beating the drum of national unity, making the case for bringing the country together after what we saw all week with the division over the carbon tax. But it'll be interesting to hear what Freeland gets from her chief actuary, a job I didn't actually know existed until today, in terms of the numbers, what we have from the provincial government, their estimate, what the federal government and what those numbers actually say. And I think worth keeping in mind, if the Alberta government is actually serious about this, this is a lengthy process. This is years down the road that this would actually come to blows. The federal government would be able to negotiate and kind of hit them back with their pitch. So it could be a lot of time before we figure out whatever the figure would be. It's likely going to be somewhere between what Alberta is talking about right now and what this chief actuary would come up with. And whether or not that final figure is something Albertans would also be sold on remains to be seen.
Yeah, because the amounts are kind of staggering here. Back to you, Sabrina. The Alberta government has thrown around a number of $334 billion out of a total amount of $525 billion in the entire Canada Pension Plan. So, that's like 60% plus that they would want to take out as their own asset. Of course, the number from this actuary will probably be a lot lower than that. But it's part of a larger thing, and I want to get your read on this. We're seeing a lot of provinces being ever more assertive, clear pushback against the Trudeau government, whether it's Alberta pensions, the carbon tax, which we're going to get to after the break. What's going on here? Is it a product of the Liberals being in power for 8 years and the fact that they're doing very poorly in political polls? What's your sense?
So, I think when it comes specifically to the pension plan, this isn't the first time that this has been floated in Conservative circles in Alberta, but for some reason it only ever really comes up as an idea when Liberals are in power federally. It's very much more about sticking it to Ottawa than it is to benefiting Albertans in our own province here. I think that the Liberals, as Rachel mentioned, do have a bit of a problem on national unity, but I think that this issue for them is going to really strengthen their position. It is a issue that is going to strengthen the idea that the Liberals are in it for every Canadian. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter how much you're contributing, that you have a fair retirement, that you have a fair future. And I think that they can really play well off of this on strengthening their core voter group, which right now happens to be seniors. And I think that hopefully they're able to take that and actually run with it and spin that into a narrative. But I think that they are facing a bit of a unity struggle, and this could be their turning point.
To you, Melanie, we heard from the head of the Alberta Federation of Labour, and I just want to read what he said about this plan. He said, basically no one, not one labour union or worker supports this, quote, fringe policy that Danielle Smith is floating. He also says that Danielle Smith is using Alberta retirement funds to play political games. So how do you think this is going to play out now? And we did hear from the finance minister, and he was very careful to say, look, we're talking about years and years and years from now.
Yeah, and they're really just at the start of the conversation. And they've been asking for weeks for the federal government to come to the table and commit to having their actuarial analyst. How many times have we said actuarial so far tonight? Having them to look over the numbers and provide their own assessment. They've been asking for that for weeks. And so now they're finally going to get one of those in the weeks or months ahead. And I think that Albertans will be able to have a real conversation about what's possible here. And the government of Alberta has been really clear that nothing's going to happen without a referendum vote. But I think this is, to your earlier point, there's a broader issue here where the provinces and the federal government have not been able to get deals done on a variety of issues. You just take the healthcare transfers as an example. I think British Columbia is the only province that's actually got their deal done. The others haven't been able to yet. Where is the federal government? Are they not at the table with the provinces?
Yeah, so what's happening there, Garatin, in terms of the federal-provincial relations and, being at arguably a low point right now?
So this is, I really want to separate this, though, and kind of reflect or quote what the Alberta Federation of Labour just said. We have one thing, which is provincial-federal relations, and then we have another thing of fringe, policy that's being put forward. But this issue, this separation of Alberta from the CPP, is a fringe political policy that's being put forward, something that's going to be detrimental, that's not founded in strong economics. It's going to actually hurt Albertan workers and workers across Canada. So we have to really look at this subject separate from the many other issues that the federal government need to improve the relationship with the provinces on. On this issue specifically, we need to say it very clearly. This is a damaging policy. It's a bad policy. It's going to hurt workers across the board. We're already hearing that with really established organizations like the Alberta Federation of Labor, and across the board, we've seen a criticism of this policy. And that's why I think on this issue, we need to look at it separately and say it's bad policy, it's bad for Canada, and it's not something that should be that we should be advancing forward.
Yeah, last word to you on this one, Rachel. Would it be fair to say that the federal government is on the defensive when it comes to this issue, when it comes to the carbon tax, that they just seem to be getting it from all sides right now?
Yeah, they're definitely on the defensive, but on this issue, I think actually less than the carbon tax, because although Poilievre has not said much on this, Todd, he has noted that he thinks it wouldn't necessarily be in Alberta's best interest to take this approach. And worth keeping in mind, depending on when this all comes down, who is in power in the federal government and the provincial government could change. And so I don't think this is going to be an issue that specifically sticks to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, and we should point out, as you're all talking about, other provinces very worried about the idea of Alberta pulling out, Ontario notably.